Hello, you're watching TVP World, and this is World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. Europe is facing two significant developments. The EU-Mercosur trade deal is encountering resistance from several member states, including Poland and Hungary, as well as concerns from French farmers, raising questions about the future of the agreement. At the same time, the European Court of Justice has ruled that all member states of the bloc must recognize same-sex marriages, prompting debate over the balance between EU law and national practices. We're now joined by Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, political science professor at the University of Warsaw. Good to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So let's hit the ground running. There's been drama at the European Parliament, this so-called fast-track request by the largest political bloc, the EPP, that was pulled back at the last moment. So where do we stand with this, and where do you think this is going, and what does that mean for this trade deal?
Well, I don't think much is going to change here because first and foremost, of course, we all know that the deal is very favorable to the European Union in the situation we have. The situation is obviously quite difficult as regards the European Union's competitiveness and those enormous spendings on security and defense. And therefore, of course, we need to search for new markets, and Mercosur countries are basically the new market that is very prospective, and I think there is a consensus over that. Of course, we may ask ourselves whether we have the best possible deal, but I think that the European Commission has contributed to presenting or to providing us with a certain security as regards potential problems that may occur while implementing the agreement. But at the moment, I would say that there is hardly anything that can undermine this project, which I find actually a good thing. Because yes, we have countries which opposed to some extent for different reasons, like Poland and France. Obviously, they try to defend their farming area, which is understandable, but the agreement provides for certain safeguards to protect farmers in the European Union in case anything goes wrong. There are provisions within the agreement which may support European farmers in case of any troubles that may occur. But let's be honest, I mean, of course, we understand that EPP and Germany, that they might opt for as a quick implementation of the agreement as possible. So I think that the Commission will still try to make it as fast as possible, and it will achieve a consensus, I suppose, with the European Parliament. It will convince the MEPs to just go on as soon as possible in this difficult and trembling international situation we are having at the moment. I think that at the end of the day, the European Commission usually managed to deal with such situations as the one we have been facing recently. I think that before
on that point,
the 20th
Renata, if I may just jump in
December,
there.
It should be conducted.
If I might just jump in there, if we're looking at, you said this is favorable to the European Union overall, this deal.
Absolutely.
I mean, that may well be the case, but it does, let's say, on some, and the opponents could say that it lines out and favors, for instance, heavy manufacturing countries, export countries like Germany, the automotive industry. At the same time, you said the safeguards are there. Let's say the opponents of this deal, especially out of Poland, have said they're not sufficient. So how do we balance those two? It's good for the whole, for exports. It's not so good for the farmers. Where do we draw the line there? And is there any, as you said, is there change possible here, or is it now a done deal?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say that not much will be changed here. I don't expect that there will be large changes because of the time pressure, I would say, first and foremost. But let's also not forget that a lot of arguments related to the EU Mercosur agreement are of populist nature. Farming contributes to economies of Poland or even France to the extent which we have to understand, although significant from this, let's say, strategic point of view, but not that significant as regards economy as such. And we know the Draghi report, the Letta report, we know that the EU has lost a lot of its impact on the growth, GDP in the world recently. So we have to take a look at the broader picture than just focusing on narrow areas of farming in the EU member states. Farmers are a very strong lobby. Plus, I have to admit that the European Commission hasn't properly addressed all those concerns of the farmers. I mean, it should have included farmers more into the talks on the agreement. Now it's a little bit late for that. But I think that what will happen at the end of the day, as it usually happens, is that farmers will have to adjust to the new situation, because now the agreement, it does not have to achieve a unanimity, as you know. It just requires a majority and qualified majority voting. Now it's most probably going to the Council, to Corepers. So of course we will see what will happen in the European Parliament, but I don't think there will be there will be any undermining as such of this agreement. We all know how important it is. You know, I'll give you an example of the EU-Canada agreement. Farmers had enormous concerns back then, and also in Poland, and it appeared that it was actually much ado about nothing, because farmers also gained a lot from these agreements. And of course, we may say it's a very different scale back then in the trade agreement with Canada and now. But I think that there is a lot of fear, which is also, I would say, a very taken by the populists, okay, and a fuss is made by them as well. I understand concerns, but still we have to consider the broader picture. And of course, yeah, we think about Germany and this heavy metal, let's say, production and so on. But, you know, we have to take a look at where the European Union can grow, where it can go, in which direction it should go. Let's not forget that Germany, it's a very important trade partner of Poland as well. If Germans do well, we will do well too. So, you know, we always have to include
on that note, let me jump in.
arguments into this picture.
Let me jump in on that. I think, as you said, Germany in terms of the export power, but some of those supply chains are in Poland. So I think it's a wider picture. Although, let's say, exports to Mercosur from Poland are very small. I think it's about 0.5%. Someone could argue it's also an opportunity. Look, I want to stick with Brussels and the European Union on another front, and that is this decision from the highest court of the European Union that has now ruled that same-sex marriage must be recognized across the bloc, across all member states. This has riled up certain people. So in terms of its, let's say, impact at this moment in time, how do you see this go down, for instance, in some countries like Poland, which some people have brought up as a concern? How does that work? How is it implemented? What are the effects going to be?
Well, of course, the ruling of the Court of Justice, first and foremost, it's just very consistent with other rulings, previous rulings of the Court of Justice. So there's no surprise, first of all, in here. Secondly, it will not change the Polish constitution. It will not make Poland change its constitution. However, it will just make lives of those people who otherwise would not even be recognized as married. So the factual situation would be they are singles in Poland, for example, which is actually a mistake. It's wrong. It does not confirm what the situation looks like. It will make their lives simply easier. So I don't think there is any large problem about that. Secondly, of course, populists and those anti-European votes, they will always appear in discussions about such sensitive matters as abortion or LGBTQ plus groups' rights and so on and so forth. But let's not forget that all these aspects, they are strongly related to economy as well, to the free movement of persons. This is all related to quality of life of those Europeans who move across the European Union, who settle down in other member states. There are so many Poles actually also living in other countries and marrying in other countries, and also homosexuals. Actually, there is again a lot of fuss about not that much after all, because what will happen, it will just make lives of those people easier. At the moment, the constitution does not have to be changed, and this consequence shouldn't be underlined in those discussions, because it's simply not true. However, what I would like to underline is that it may contribute strongly to those public discussions and debates on laws about, let's say, marital equality, about partnership agreements and so on and so forth, which in Poland are also present. And we have actually a proposal of a law here already in the parliament. So I think that as regards contribution to this debate, it's also a positive impact. Nevertheless, I would like to underline that this doesn't hinder rights of the member states to deciding whether they want to legalize or not same-sex marriages. Although according to the human rights regulations all over the world, it should be the case, because of course these people are still discriminated lawfully in some member states, so it shouldn't be the case. They should get the full equality, but this does not legally, at least, bind the member states to change their constitutions. It just initiates, let's say, a public discussion, or in some cases contributes to a public discussion about finalizing, let's say, providing them with full protection. And on the other hand, it just also, let's say, provides for what we've already known from previous cases of the Court of Justice, that free movement of persons, that functioning normal and safe and secured functioning of the EU citizens in different member states, so as EU, regards their EU citizens, quality of life, it's just protected better.
So it's a whole range of issues there. It does seem that Brussels, from trade to freedom of movement to recognition of certain rights, it's going to be a lot, and I'm afraid we're going to have to close it there. But really interesting insights, really appreciate it there. That was Professor Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene. Much appreciated. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World. There's much more coming up, so don't go away. Goodbye.